Have you ever looked at someone and thought you understood the future, only to realize one moment later that the future had other plans for you? I'm asking you that because right now, as I talk to you, I can still remember the exact second my chest tightened. Not the dramatic kind you see in movies. This was quieter, more dangerous, the kind that sneaks up on you while you're pretending everything is under control. You know that feeling, don't you? When you're used to solving problems, building things, predicting outcomes, and then one human being walks in and shatters your equations. You're sitting here with me. So let me talk to you like I would to a friend late at night when the world slows down and the noise fades. Because this isn't a story about success or ambition. This is about how I never expected my future wife to make me cry like this and how it started long before I understood what she meant. At first, she didn't look like destiny. That's the strange part. No lightning strike, no cinematic music, just a conversation that lingered longer than it should have. Have you ever had that? A moment where time stretches just enough to make you uneasy. I noticed how she listened, not politely, not passively. She listened like your words mattered more than the room around you. That scared me more than I'll ever admit out loud. Because when someone listens like that, they see things you've spent years keeping locked away. And you know what it's like to keep walls up, right? To build yourself into someone who doesn't need anyone else. I thought I was immune to this kind of thing. I had already lived through love that burned hot and collapsed under its own weight. I had learned how attachment can turn into distraction, how emotions can interfere with clarity. That's what I told myself. But she didn't push. She didn't demand. She just existed in my space and somehow changed the temperature of it. The first time my mother asked about her, I hesitated. That should tell you something. My mother has always been protective, isn't even the right word. She watches patterns. She sees storms before clouds form. When you grow up with someone like that, you learn early that love isn't just about who you choose. It's about who stands beside you when things fall apart. So, who is she? My mother asked casually. But you and I both know there's no such thing as casual with her. I gave a vague answer. You've done that too, haven't you? When you're not ready to make something real by saying it out loud. She looked at me for a long moment, too long. You sound different, she said. That was the first crack. Because I was different. I just didn't want to admit why. You see, when you spend your life being the one who leads, who decides, who carries weight, falling feels irresponsible. Falling feels like losing control. And she made me feel like I was already leaning even when I stood still. The night everything shifted. I was exhausted, not physically, emotionally, the kind of tired you can't sleep off. She noticed immediately. She always did. You don't have to be strong right now, she said. Do you know how dangerous those words are to someone who's built his entire identity around strength? I laughed it off, made a joke, changed the subject, but inside, something gave way because I realized no one had said that to me in years. Not sincerely, not without wanting something in return. That's when I understood the fear. Not fear of losing her, fear of needing her. I went home that night and couldn't think straight. I replayed every conversation, every look, every pause. You've been there, lying awake, staring at the ceiling, bargaining with your own thoughts, telling yourself this is temporary, telling yourself you're imagining things. My mother called the next morning. You didn't sleep, she said. Not a question. How do mothers do that? How do they hear the truth between your breaths? I didn't answer right away, and in that silence, she knew. Be careful, she said gently. You give too much when you love. That hit harder than any warning, because she wasn't accusing, she was worried. Do you feel that tension right now? The pull between wanting something deeply and knowing how much it could cost? I wanted to tell her she was wrong, that I had learned that I had control, but my voice didn't cooperate. Instead, I asked myself something I'd avoided for years. What if this isn't a weakness? If this is the thing I've been running from? The next time I saw her, she sensed the shift immediately. She always did. She asked if I was okay, and for a moment, I almost told the truth. Almost. I told her a safer version instead, that I was thinking too much, that things felt complicated. She smiled softly. Not dismissive, understanding. Complicated doesn't scare me, she said. Silence does. That's when it happened. That tightness in my chest turned into something sharper. My throat burned. I looked away because I refused to let her see it. I had faced pressure, failure, public scrutiny, but this was different. I excused myself, stepped outside, breathed in cold air like it could reset me, and then, standing there alone, I realized something that shook me more than any loss I'd known before. I cared, Not casually, not intellectually, deeply enough that the thought of hurting her or being hurt by her made my eyes sting. Have you ever reached a moment where you realize there's no safe exit anymore? Because that's where I was, between the woman who saw me and the mother who knew exactly what that meant, between who I had been and who I was becoming without permission. I wiped my face before going back inside. She didn't say anything. She didn't need to. She just reached for my hand briefly, like a promise she wasn't asking me to make yet. That night stayed with me, the quiet kind of night that changes the way you wake up the next morning. And as I talk to you now, I can tell you this. Nothing prepares you for the moment love stops being an idea and starts being a risk. Do you feel that shift too? That sense that something is unfolding whether you're ready or not? Because once that door opens, it doesn't close the same way again. Have you ever noticed how silence gets louder after you admit something to yourself? Because that's what happened next. Not immediately, not dramatically, just a quiet awareness that followed me everywhere, like a shadow I couldn't shake. I'd be sitting across from you, nodding, listening, pretending I was present, and inside my mind would drift back to her expression that night. The calm in her eyes, the patience, the way she didn't chase me when I stepped away. That kind of restraint does something to you. It makes you wonder if you're the one being studied. You see, I'm used to intensity, big emotions, fireworks, conflict that explodes and burns out. But this was different. This was slow, intentional, almost surgical, and that scared me more than chaos ever could. I started pulling back. Not completely, just enough to test the ground. You've done that, right? When you're not ready to jump, but you want to see if the bridge holds. She noticed immediately. She didn't confront me. She didn't accuse. She asked questions that felt harmless but weren't. Are you okay? You seem distant. Did I do something? Those questions aren't loud, but they echo. I told myself I was protecting her, that I didn't want to drag her in. Oh, my world. The pressure, the expectations, the unpredictability. That's a convenient lie, isn't it? It sounds noble. It hides fear behind responsibility. My mother saw through it within days. You're disappearing again, she said when we talked. That's what you do when you're afraid. I almost laughed. Almost. Because hearing your pattern spoken out loud strips away your excuses. I'm not afraid, I said automatically. She didn't argue. She rarely does when she knows she's right. Then why do you sound like you're bracing for impact? That question stayed with me because the truth was I was waiting for something to go wrong. I was watching her for cracks, flaws, warning signs, anything that would justify retreat. Not because she gave me reasons, because I needed them. Do you recognize that impulse? The need to prove your fear correct so you don't have to face hope. The night it all came to a head wasn't planned. Nothing big ever is. She invited me over. Simple, casual, no expectations. I almost said no. I should have said no if I wanted to keep pretending I was in control. When I arrived, the place felt lived in, warm, not curated, not performative. It felt like someone who expected to stay. We talked, we laughed, normal things. And then without warning, she brought up my mother. She worries about you, she said gently. I froze. You talked to her? I asked. She nodded briefly. She wanted to understand who I was. Of course she did. I should have been angry, protective, defensive. Instead, I felt exposed, like two worlds I'd carefully kept separate had collided without my consent. What did she say? I asked, already bracing. She said, you don't let people stay unless they're willing to stand in the storm with you. That was it. That sentence cut through every layer I'd built because my mother doesn't waste words. And hearing them reflected back through someone else's voice felt like standing in front of a mirror I hadn't agreed to look into. I stood up, started pacing. You know that restless energy when your body reacts before your mind catches up. I don't want you dragged into something you didn't sign up for, I said. My life isn't simple. She didn't interrupt. She waited until I stopped moving. I didn't ask for simple, she said. I asked for honest. That's when my chest tightened again. Worse this time. I told her things I hadn't planned to, about past failures, about relationships that collapsed under pressure, about the fear of becoming someone who hurts the people closest to him because he doesn't know how to slow down. She listened fully. No flinching. When I finished, I expected distance, reconsideration, a step back. Instead, she reached for my hand. You don't scare me, she said. But the way you talk about yourself, that worries me. No one had ever said that to me before, not as an accusation, as concern, and something broke. Not loudly, quietly, the way a dam cracks before it collapses. I felt my eyes burn. I looked away again. Pride, reflex. But this time she didn't let me. She stood in front of me, steady, unmoving. Hey, she said softly. You don't have to disappear right now. That's when it happened. I cried. Not the composed kind, not the dignified kind. The kind you don't plan for. The kind that feels humiliating and relieving at the same time. Have you ever cried in front of someone you didn't want to see you weak? My hands shook. My breath came uneven. Years of pressure, expectations, losses, loneliness collapsed into that moment, and she didn't flinch. She didn't step back. She wrapped her arms around me like this wasn't something she needed to escape from. That's when I realized how deeply I'd underestimated her. Later that night, after the storm passed, I sat alone in my car and called my mother. She answered immediately. You cried, she said. I didn't ask how she knew. Yes, I admitted. There was a pause, then something rare in her voice, relief. That's good, she said. It means you stopped running for a moment. I stared out at the dark, feeling raw, exposed, and strangely lighter. What if I lose her? I asked quietly. Then you'll survive, my mother said. But if you never let her in, you'll lose yourself first. That was the truth I couldn't argue with. The next morning, I woke up knowing something had shifted permanently, not because the fear was gone, but because it had been seen. And when fear is seen, it changes shape. Do you know that feeling when you realize love isn't asking you to be less, but daring you to be fully known? Because that's where I was standing at the edge of something that could either save me or break me open. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't want to step back. Have you ever noticed how the world keeps moving even after something inside you changes? Because that's what surprised me most. The day after I cried in front of her, the sun still came up, messages still came in, decisions still demanded answers. From the outside, nothing looked different, but inside, it felt like I'd crossed a line I couldn't uncross. And you know that feeling when you're aware that something irreversible has happened, even if no one else can see it. She didn't bring it up right away. That was her way. She never used vulnerability as leverage. Instead, she treated me the same. Calm, warm, present, almost as if she understood that I needed time to catch up to myself. That kindness was dangerous because when someone doesn't punish you for being exposed, you start to trust them with more than you planned. I tried to regain control by focusing on work. Long hours, structured days, numbers, systems, things that behave logically. You've done that too, right? When emotions get too loud, you turn the volume up on productivity. But she had a way of slipping through the cracks. A text at the wrong moment, a question that wasn't urgent but felt necessary. Did you eat? How are you really doing? Simple words, heavy impact. My mother noticed the shift before I admitted it to myself. You're not hiding as well, she said. One evening I smirked. Was I hiding? She sighed. You were disappearing. There's a difference. I leaned back, staring at the ceiling, feeling that familiar tug-of-war inside my chest. She makes you uncomfortable, my mother continued. Not because she's wrong for you, because she sees you. That sentence stayed with me longer than I expected. Seeing someone isn't romantic in the movie sense, it's invasive. It means noticing when the confidence cracks, when the jokes are armor, when silence means overload instead of peace. And she saw all of it. The first real conflict between us didn't come from jealousy or misunderstanding. It came from fear, mine. She asked where we were going, not dramatically, not with pressure, just curiosity. And I felt cornered. Have you ever reacted defensively to a question that wasn't an attack? I gave a vague answer, something safe, something non-committal. Her expression changed. Not angry, not hurt, thoughtful. You don't have to decide everything right now, she said. But I need to know you're not keeping me in a waiting room. That's when my instincts flared. The old ones, the ones that say distance equals safety. I pulled back again. Not completely, just enough to create space, just enough to remind myself I could. She felt it immediately. The next few days were quieter, shorter conversations, less warmth, not punishment, self-respect, and that was worse. Do you know how unsettling it is when someone doesn't chase you? I found myself replaying her words late at night, the calm certainty in her voice, the boundaries she set without raising it like a weapon. My mother didn't say, I told you so. She never does. Instead, she asked, what are you afraid of losing? I thought about it long and hard. Control, I wanted to say, but that wasn't honest enough. I'm afraid, I said slowly, that if I choose her fully and it falls apart, I won't recover the same way. My mother was quiet for a moment. Love doesn't leave you the way it found you, she said. That's the risk. That night, I drove without a destination. You've done that, letting motion substitute for clarity. The city lights blurred past, and all I could think about was the way she'd looked at me when I avoided her question. Not angry, disappointed. Disappointment cuts deeper than anger. I realized something uncomfortable then. I wasn't afraid of her leaving. I was afraid of staying and being changed. The next time I saw her, she looked tired. not physically, emotionally, the kind of tired that comes from holding space without knowing if it's appreciated. She didn't accuse me. She didn't demand answers. She just said, I need to know if I matter to you the way you matter to me. No ultimatums, no drama, just truth. And suddenly, all my defenses felt childish. I sat down across from her, hands clasped, heart pounding in a way that had nothing to do with excitement. You matter, I said. That's the problem. She tilted her head slightly, waiting. I don't love halfway, I continued. When I fall completely. And I've seen what happens when that kind of intensity meets the wrong timing. She listened, always listening. What happens? She asked softly. If the timing isn't wrong, that question unraveled me, because I didn't have an answer. I looked at her and saw someone who wasn't asking to be rescued or managed or protected from life. She was asking to walk beside me, eyes open, and I realized how rare that is. I don't want to hurt you, I said. She reached across the table, fingers brushing mine. You already would have if that was who you were. That's when the second wave hit. Not tears this time. Something heavier. Gratitude mixed with fear, the weight of being trusted. Later that evening, my mother met her properly, not formally, intentionally. I watched them from across the room. Two women who loved me in different ways, assessing each other quietly. My mother asked hard questions about values, about resilience, about what she would do if life became unbearable. She swore without rehearsing, without trying to impress. When my mother finally nodded, I felt something loosen in my chest. Afterward, my mother pulled me aside. She won't make your life easier, she said, but she'll make it honest. That night, lying awake beside her, listening to her breathe, I felt something close to peace and something close to terror. Because peace asks you to stay and terror asks you to run. I turned toward her in the dark and wondered silently, how many people ever get this close to something real and still choose it? Do you know what that choice feels like when walking away would be simpler, but staying feels necessary? Because as I lay there, I understood one thing with painful clarity. If I let myself love her the way she deserved, there would be no going back. And that realization didn't scare me as much as it should have. Have you ever noticed how the quiet moments become the loudest right before everything changes? Because that's where this part of the story lives. Not in arguments or dramatic exits, in the spaces between words, in the pauses where you realize a decision has already been made somewhere deep inside you, even if your mouth hasn't caught up yet. After that night, after my mother's approval settled into something unspoken but solid, I should have felt relief. That's what logic suggested. The variables were aligning, the risks were understood, the path was visible. Instead, I felt exposed. Not to her, to myself. You see, once you stop running, you have to stand still long enough to feel everything you've been avoiding. And I felt it all. The fear of repetition, the fear of loss, the fear that loving her would rearrange my priorities in ways I couldn't reverse. She sensed it, of course. You're somewhere else again, she said one morning, watching me from across the room. I smiled automatically, just thinking. She didn't smile back, thinking or bracing. That question landed harder than it should have. I realized then that love like this doesn't let you hide behind intelligence or charm. It asks you to be present even when you'd rather retreat into your head. That day, my mother called unexpectedly. I had a dream about you, she said. I waited with her. Dreams are never just dreams. You were standing at a door, she continued. You kept opening it, looking out, then closing it again, afraid someone would lock it behind you. I closed my eyes. What happened in the dream? I asked. You got tired, she said, and you stopped closing the door. That image followed me all day that evening. She and I went for a walk. No agenda, no heavy talk planned, just movement, just air. But some conversations don't need invitations. She stopped suddenly and turned to me. You don't believe this yet, she said, but I'm not trying to take anything from you. I looked at her confused. I'm trying to build something with you, she continued. And that only works if you stop acting like love is a hostile takeover. I laughed under my breath despite myself because she wasn't wrong. I'm scared, I admitted quietly. I know, she said, but fear doesn't get to make all the decisions. We stood there for a long moment, the world moving around us, cars passing, people laughing somewhere nearby, life continuing, indifferent to my internal storm. Do you think, I asked slowly, that love should hurt this much before it even begins? She didn't answer right away. I think, she said finally, that what hurts is resisting what you already feel. That was the moment I felt it again. That tightness, that burn behind the eyes. I turned away instinctively, but it was useless this time. Tears came fast, uncontrolled, embarrassing. I covered my face, frustrated with myself, angry that after everything I'd endured, this was what undid me. She didn't touch me immediately. She waited, gave me space to breathe through it. When she finally spoke, her voice was steady. You don't have to carry everything alone just because you can. That sentence broke something open. I cried harder then, not because I was sad, because I was relieved. Relieved that someone wasn't asking me to be less intense, less driven, less complicated, just more honest. Later that night, I sat with my mother again. I told her everything. Not the filtered version, the truth. She listened as she always had. You're crying more than you ever have, she observed gently. Yes, I said, and it scares me. She reached for my hand, something she rarely does anymore. It means you've stopped negotiating with your heart, she said. That's not weakness, that's surrender. Surrender. I'd avoided that word my entire life. But lying there afterward, replaying the day, I understood something crucial. She wasn't making me cry because she hurt me. She was making me cry because she stayed. Because she didn't demand certainty. Only presence, because she saw the worst parts of my fear and didn't try to fix them, just accepted them. And that's when it hit me. This wasn't heartbreak. This was the beginning of something irreversible. The kind of love that doesn't explode but settles. The kind that rewires you slowly, quietly, until one day you realize you're not the same man you were before. I looked at her sleeping beside me, peaceful, unaware of the war she'd helped end without ever fighting it. And I thought, I never expected my future wife to make me cry like this. Not from pain, but from recognition, from being seen, from finally letting go of the door. Do you understand what that feels like when the thing you feared most turns out to be the thing that steadies you? Because if you do, then you know why I stopped running that night, and why some tears don't signal loss, they signal arrival. Have you ever realized that the moment you stop fighting love is the moment it starts telling you the truth? Because that's where I am now, talking to you. Not from the middle of the storm, not from the edge anymore, but from the quiet that comes after. You finally lay your armor down and realize you don't need it the way you thought you did. I used to believe tears meant failure, loss of control, weakness leaking out where it didn't belong. I thought if I cried, it meant something had gone wrong, that something had broken beyond repair. I was wrong. The tears she pulled out of me weren't about pain, they were about permission. Permission to stop performing, permission to stop being indestructible. Permission to admit that even the strongest structures need a place to rest. You see, she never tried to change me. That's the part people don't understand. She didn't ask me to slow down my mind or soften my ambition or shrink myself into something easier to love. She just stood there steady, patient, while I wrestled with the version of myself I'd been hiding behind for years. And my mother, she saw it before I did. One evening, long after everything had settled, my mother looked at me and said something I'll never forget. She didn't tame you, she said. She gave you somewhere safe to land. That's when I understood why this love felt so different. It wasn't loud, it wasn't dramatic. It didn't beg or chase or threaten to leave. It waited. It watched. It trusted me to meet it where it stood. And that trust, that's what made me cry the most. Because when someone believes in you that deeply, you're forced to face a terrifying question. What if they're right about you? What if you really are capable of staying? Of choosing one person, not out of obligation, but out of clarity, of building something that doesn't burn out, but burns steady. I never expected my future wife to make me cry like this. And if you have, did you stay? Or are you still standing at the door, opening it just enough to look out, afraid to let it close behind you? If this story reached you, if it stirred something you've been carrying quietly, then you're not alone. Stories like this don't resonate by accident. If you felt it, I hope you'll show it. Like the video, subscribe if you want to hear more stories like this. Stories about love, fear, family, and the moments that break us open in the best way, and share it with someone who might need to hear that it's okay to stop running. Because sometimes the bravest thing you can do is let yourself cry for the right reason and let someone